はい、皆さん、こんにちは。クリエーションラインの安田でございます。今日はですね、クリエーションラインで2022に、ご参加いただきましてありがとうございます。で、今日はこのイベントのためにですね、メンロイノベーションズの CEO、リッチーさんがビデオ登壇していただくことになりまして、今、収録をしております。リッチーに関してはもう説明必要ないと思うんですけども、ジョインクの著者でもあります。で、個人としてはですね、本当にもう、ロールモデルとさせていただいておりますし、会社としては、理念でですね、HRT プラスジョイと、いうことをしていている、このプラスジョイの部分ね、ベースとなっている、もの、会社がこのメンロイノベーションズということになります。で、今日はですね、対談という形で、私が、日本語ですけども質問させていただいて、それに対して、英語で回答していただくという形式になっております。ぜひですね、短い時間ですけども、有意義な時間にしていきたいと思っておりますので、よろしくお願いいたします。では、早速ですね、リッチーさんに自己紹介から、スタートしていただきたいと思います。お願いいたします。
Hi, I'm Rich Sheridan. I'm the CEO, co-founder, chief storyteller at Menlo Innovations. And we are a software design and development firm in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan, with a central theme of Menlo. The point of our culture is to end human suffering in the world as it relates to technology. And we do that through a goal that we have to return joy to the world of software design and development. And we ultimately want to delight the people we intend to serve with the work that we do at Menlo. When we're designing and developing software, we want to delight the end users of the software with the work that we do. And so we've created a whole system to make that possible and do it on a regular and sustained basis.
はい。ありがとうございます。その、自己紹介の中にもですね、とても興味深いキーワードがいくつかあったと思います。で、今日それに、沿ってですね、いろいろお話をしていきたいなと思うんですけども、まずは、その、ジョインクの、中にも出てきた、言葉なんですけども、僕たちの一番大事なリソースは人であってスキルではないので、最良の人たちを維持するためなら何でもするという、言葉がありました。本当にもう素晴らしいなと思いますし、同意しております。で、その、考えに対して、今現在、メノイノベーションズとして具体的に、どのような取り組みをしているのか、ということを教えていただけますでしょうか。ジョインクの中にもね、メンローベイビーの話も出てきます。で、本の中でもね、詳しく説明されていますが、それ具体的に、どのようなきっかけで始まったのか、みたいなこともですね、非常に興味を持っております。よろしくお願いいたします。
Software design and development at its heart is about people. In every dimension, it is about people, right? It is the people doing the work. It is the people who are paying us to do the work, our customers, and is the people we are doing the work for, the ultimate end users of the software we are creating. We want to produce joyful outcomes in the world with our work. We want people to love what it is we do. We do not believe it is possible to produce joy in the world unless there is also joy at Menlo. And I think over the course of my own career, I have watched leaders, managers, executives lead their teams with fear, to create fear in order to motivate teams, rather than to try and draw the best out of their people. And there's so many things we do, that corporations do everywhere that are just not in the best aim of taking the best care of their people, who are the ones ultimately who are going to do all the work. And so, yes, we have created a culture that is focused on the people. We actually have some significant cultural norms at Menlo that are very important to us. For one thing, we want people who, as we like to say, have good kindergarten skills, who play well with others. So ultimately what I wanted, and maybe this is a little bit just selfish for me, I wanted a place I wanted to go to work every day, filled with human energy, with camaraderie, with laughter, with excitement, with human energy. I wanted that. I wanted to go into that kind of place every single day. And a lot of my jobs before Menlo did not feel like that. Sometimes I would take the longest possible routes to work. I would show up as late as I could. I would leave as early as I could because I just didn't want to be there. I didn't want to create a company that looked like that. So yes, there are many things we do to engage the spirit and the energy of the humans, of the people who work at Menlo. And one of our most famous experiments, as you talk about, is the Menlo babies. And that was a very practical answer to a very real problem. One of our team members had a child, and the daycare they planned to use was full, and grandparents lived too far away to help. And she was stuck, and she wanted to come back to work. So we suggested an experiment and said, why don't you bring the baby in? She wasn't sure if it would work. We weren't sure if it would work. We tried it, and it worked. And once something works once for us, we just keep trying it again and again. And we've had 25 Menlo babies come into the office in the last 13 years. They come in all day, every day. They stayed for several months, and it has worked. It has been a delightful experiment for us. And you can imagine that the parents are a lot less anxious. They know where their child is. They don't have to worry about, is the child sick at daycare? Do I have to run out of the office on a moment's notice? Do I have to take that phone call to see what's going on? No, the baby's right there. So it's created a great deal of comfort for the parents. But quite frankly, the team loves it too. The joy, the energy of a little baby human being in the room delights our team, delights our customers, delights me. And so this has been a great part of Menlo. And there are many, many things we do like this that keep the human energy of our team as high as possible. Because ultimately, as leaders, that's our most precious resource, is the human energy of our team. And if we can do anything we can to keep that energy high, we will get better results. We will get better business results. We will engage with our customers better. We will be happier with the outcomes.
はい、ありがとうございます。非常によくわかりました。あと、この、ヒューマンエナジーにフォーカスするっていう、キーワードがあったかと思います。これが、企業の文化とか、最終的なこの、成果っていうんですかね、を高めるために、非常に重要な要素なのかなというふうに聞いておりました。で、ちょっと次の話題なんですけども、アジャイルっていう言葉自体が、ジョインクの中には、アジャイル開発も含めてなんですけども、出てきませんでした。で、これについて何か意図するところがあるんでしょうか。もしあれば、ぜひ教えていただければなと思っています。
And there's a lot of books on Agile that talk about Menlo. Many Agile authors have come to visit us, admire what we've created, see the agility of our team, and tell us, hey, you are doing what the Agile Manifesto talks about, and we understand that. Interestingly enough, we started Menlo before the word Agile was even a word. Before the Agile Manifesto was even written, Menlo was already born. And so we didn't need that word to launch Menlo. We didn't need those concepts. As my co-founder James likes to say, we didn't create Menlo to be agile. We didn't create Menlo to be lean. We didn't create Menlo to subscribe to theories of Six Sigma or design thinking. We created Menlo to solve problems. The tools of agile, the tools of lean, the tools of design thinking, the math of Six Sigma, all of these things are very valuable to us. The lessons from W. Edwards Deming, the lessons we can learn from companies like Toyota are very important to us. We are more than willing to borrow ideas from other companies that have made great strides in improving their own cultures. We learn from companies like Vital Smarts and Arbinger Institute and the Covey Institute. I mean, we are always in learning mode. And so for us to choose simply the word agile to describe us, I think would diminish us, because we certainly embody the principles of agile. We have great respect for the agile community. For us, we wanted to create a bigger system. We wanted to create a wholeness to our company that embraced things around traditional HR practices and what we thought were broken there. How to take care of our team members, how to make sure we're interacting appropriately with our clients. So we can learn from the Project Management Institute and the Project Management Book of Knowledge. There are so many places we can learn, and we're going to stay in that mode of learning from everywhere we can. So that's probably why you don't see us grab one of those words and say, we are this or we are that. We borrow from all of those sources of information to solve problems. And the problems we want to solve, we think are big problems. Our society wrestles with how to accomplish big software projects successfully. And we've seen, I'm sure you've seen as well, so many different failures of big software projects. And it can't be one thing that's going to make that better. It's going to require learning from a lot of different sources.
はい。ありがとうございます。とてもよくわかりました。アジャイルというのは一つの、パーツっていうんですかね、ものであって、それが全てではないと。で、逆にこのアジャイルという言葉を使うことによって、誤解を招いてしまうことも、あるので、使わない、あまり出てこないということと理解しました。本当によく理解できました。で、僕らもね、そのアジャイルとかアジャイル開発とか、結構、そのコンセプトも含めて、よく使うんですけど、そういうことを今おっしゃっていただいたので、いろんな、組織を運営するための一つの、要素であるということを意識して、使っていきたい、考えていきたいなというふうに思いました。で、次のキーワードなんですけど、心理的安全性という言葉、これ日本でも最近よく使われるんですけども、について伺いたいなと。で、これもともとはGoogle の調査で、リワークプラクティスですかね、という中で出てきた言葉が発端になっていると聞いております。で、これについて、リッチーさんが、どのように考えているのか、また、メンロイノベーションズで、その心理的安全性に近いコンセプト、どのようなものがあるのか、教えていただけるとありがたいです。
Yeah, well, number one, I have a lot of respect for how Google even came up with that idea, right? Because for a long time, I think Google believed that if they hired the best graduating students from the best universities around the world, they would get the best teams. And they were wise enough to go back and say, well, let's see if that's true. And they found out that it wasn't true. And they were willing to admit it. They were willing to say, hey, we analyzed our organization. We found the highest performing teams. We tried to see if there was a correlation between all these really bright people we were hiring and the results those teams are producing. And he found out there wasn't. And he found out there was something else. And they told the world, which I really, again, I admire. I think that is incredibly transparent of them. And they found out they didn't need the best students from the best universities. They needed people who played well together. Now, I'll use my term for that. They needed people who took care of each other, who cared for one another enough to not make them feel afraid at work, right? And that happens a lot in workplaces. When I was brought up as a new manager, I was taught to lead with fear. I remember my very first boss told me, he says, Rich, if you see two people talking to each other in a hallway, just walk up to them and stand there. Don't have to say anything. They'll get back to work because they're afraid of you. Wow. Now, this is hilarious now, right? If you think about Menlo, I have institutionalized two people talking to each other all day long in our pairs. So for us, the word safety probably doesn't come up as much, but the word fear does. And I tell our team that my job as one of the top leaders at Menlo is to pump fear out of the room as much as possible. You know, if you think of an HVAC system, a heating, ventilation, and cooling system, right? What does it do? It pumps cold air out of the room, filters it, warms it up, and pumps that warm air back into the room. We could use that as a metaphor for our human organizations. Let's set up a leadership model where we pump fear out of the room, filter out as much ambiguity as possible, warm the temperature up to a nice safe temperature, and pump safety back in. And we will get much higher performing teams. And there's one key reason this is important, and it has to do with our humanity. The thing that differentiates us as humans is this amazing part of our brain up here where creativity, imagination, invention, and innovation come from. That's the thing that separates us as humans. That's the thing that will keep us going even when AI seems to be taking over the world, are those things, the parts that make us the most human. And you know what? It's that part of your brain that literally gets shut down by the chemicals your body releases when you're afraid. Adrenaline and cortisol send the blood to our extremities. They take it away from this part of our brain, and we become reptiles. We become so afraid we can't even see beyond a narrow focus. That is not going to produce the kind of inventions, the kind of innovations that corporations now demand from their people. I think we have, I remember growing up, there were ages we talked about in history. There was the Bronze Age, and there was the Industrial Age, and there was the Space Age. I think right now we are in the age of imagination because we don't have any more constraints, do we? You think about the computing power that I carry around in this little device in my pocket, probably equal to all the computers that were existing on the planet when I was born, and I carry it around in my pocket. The advances that are happening every single day in terms of the capacity of those machines. The thing that limits us now isn't how much memory, how much screen size, how many pixels, how much disk space, how fast do they run? No, they can all do everything we need them to do. What limits us now is our imagination. That's why psychological safety is important to corporations. That's why we have to create environments where our team can be at their best selves for inventing and for imagining.
はい、ありがとうございます。とてもよく理解できました。で、僕らもやっぱりそのメンバーのそのアイデアがどんどん出てくるような環境を作って、で、それを価値としてどんどんクライアントに提供していきたいと思ってやっていますと。で、その一方で、そのクライアントの、考え方っていうんですかね、メンタリティっていうのが、これ一般論としてですね、僕らのお客さんではないということを前提にお話しすると、その恐怖っていうんですかね、その押さえつけるような、感じでですね、期限を守らせたりですとか、またその予算の中にいろんな機能を盛り込んだりですとか、そういったことをする、なんていうんですかね、そういうメンタリティを考え方を持っているクライアントがいることも、事実としてあると思っていますと。で、そういうそのメンタリティですかね、考え方を持っているクライアントを相手するとは非常に辛いですし、難しい、ことだと思うんですね。で、それを、なんていうんですかね、その考え方、メンタリティを変えていくことっていうことも難しいし、で、また一方、僕らのそういう考え方っていうんですかね、そのいろんなアイデアを出していきたいとか、その創造性を発揮していきたいというその考え方を理解してもらうこともなかなか難しいなというふうにも感じていますと。
And I will tell you, this is one of the reasons we do tours of Menlo. Because you can imagine, we don't know who's going to come on a tour. It could be someone who's just curious. It could be someone who read the book and they want to take some ideas away. It could be somebody who wants to come work for us. Or it could be a potential customer. And they might all be in the room together. And the beautiful thing about our tours and our stories that we tell is the stories are the same for everyone. I will talk about fear. I will talk about how projects fail. I will talk about difficult clients. And I'm sure there have been people who walk through go, oh, wow, he's talking about me. I would be that kind of difficult client. Maybe I shouldn't bring my project here. And that's okay with us. We're not trying to be all things to all people. It probably keeps us smaller. Maybe we don't grow as fast. But our goal is not growth. Our goal is joy. And that creates a different kind of business attitude. You know, we never fire customers per se, where we tell them, oh, you just can't bring your project here. But we will slow them down. We will try and teach them, why is it that we work the way we do? Why do we put two people on one computer? Why do we switch these pairs every 5 days? There is a lot of, and this is what I both appreciate about Agile, but also expand on the concept of it. For us, it goes back to systems thinking. How do we create effective systems for doing work? And the best systems are the ones that have short communication and feedback loops. That's what systems actually need. The slower and longer the feedback loop, the worse things go. It's what I've always appreciated about the idea of iterative and incremental software development, which is one of the foundational principles of Agile. Let's work in short cycles. Let's do small pieces. Let's see if we can get those small pieces complete enough to go out the door. That is a lot like the single piece flow work that you would see inside of the Toyota production system or the broader lean thinking. All of these concepts are the same in every human organization, right? It has to do with how do people work best? And we work best when we're getting feedback on the work that we're doing. Small pieces done well or done poorly, we can correct them when they're small. And there's a lot less fear if we're working in small pieces at a time. If we work on something very big and long and it goes wrong, nobody wants to admit that, right? Nobody wants to, sort of confess that, oh, we've made a huge, expensive, slow mistake. So you start burying all the bad information and you hope it'll go away. But, we have a big poster at Menlo that says fear does not make bad news go away. It makes it go into hiding, and then we can't deal with it anymore.
はい、そうですね。なんか抑圧されているとか、押さえつけられると、恐怖心を持つし、その透明性っていうのが、失われていくっていうことなのかなと思いました。で、今ちょっとその話の中で思い出したんですけども、そのチーフジョイオフィサーの中で、触れられていたんですけど、そのアラン・マラリーさん、そのフォード社の、話があったかと思います。で、それについて少し可能でしたらご説明していただけますか。
Yeah, well, when Alan Mulally took over at Ford as the CEO, they were in trouble, big trouble. I think they were about to lose $17 billion that year. And every week he would gather his top leaders together and ask them to report out their status with a color. Green, everything's going well. Yellow, there's some trouble that we're working on. Red, I need help. Okay. And so he would go around his management team every single week, right after he joined. And everybody would say, green boss, green boss, green boss. And after a few weeks of that, he was getting a little frustrated. And he looked at his team and he said, guys, does it seem strange to you that we're a company that's about to lose $17 billion this year? And I've got my entire management team here with me, and you're all telling me everything's A-okay. There must be something wrong here. And it wasn't until Mark Fields finally came in with a red that the culture changed. Because everybody assumed as soon as a red showed up, they'd be fired. And Alan Mulally clapped. And he said, great, who can help Mark with his problem? And suddenly everybody's like, well, I think I could help, and I think I could help, and I think we could get a team in there to help. And then there was a new day at Ford Motor Company after that. because now they had a team. They had a team that supported one another, that could be vulnerable with one another, that could admit that something went wrong, because things are going to go wrong. They just are. There's never been a company or a system or a group of people that have been perfect, ever. And anytime we set expectations that we have to be perfect in order to be able to stay, then there's a lot of fear. And then things go really slow. And then they go really bad because we start lying about being done. We start lying about quality. We start lying about how well things are going. And then big bad things happen over time. Yeah, we had to teach our project managers. And project managers are often where fear begins. It's just, they create plans. They broadcast the plans to whoever they're working for. And then they tell the team, here's the plan. And, in the back of their mind, they're like, and you better do this perfectly. And then something goes wrong. And depending on how the project manager reacts when they hear the bad news, will tell you whether the bad news will ever flow again. If they throw up their hands and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe it again. You did this again. It doesn't take more than one or two of those reactions, and all of a sudden, all bad news stops flowing. So we've had to teach our project managers, when they get that bad news, to smile, literally smile, and say, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Now let's work on what can we do. That's one place where we have a very explicit action that we have taken to deal with the fear that can drive teams' bad news underground. We don't want that.
本当に面白いなと、非常に興味深い話でした。その通りだなと思いました。で、今、フォードのアラン・マラリーさんの話が出ましたですけども、彼以外に、リッチーさんの考えのベースとなっている、方だったり、その考え方だったり、またロールモデル、リッチーさんのそのロールモデルとしている方、がいれば、ぜひ教えていただけますでしょうか。
I was very fortunate to have a boss back at my old company, Interface Systems, just when we were creating call it the prototype for Menlo inside of Interface Systems. Bob Nero was his name. It is his name. He's still with us, and he's a good friend of mine. Bob was the CEO. I was the VP of R&D at the time. And when I proposed making the kind of changes that I was about to make, and they were big changes, and change can be scary, and I'd never done anything like this, and there were no books to read because we were about to create a Menlo in 1999, and there was nobody doing anything like that. And so we tried a big new experiment, and Bob liked what he was seeing. And every time I would doubt myself, every time I would be getting tired, anytime I would slow down, Bob would put his hand on my shoulder, look me in the eye and say, Rich, you're doing the right thing. I've got you covered. Keep going. And that just that little bit of encouragement was so important to me, to know that I didn't have to fight with him while I'm fighting with all the change that I was doing. I didn't have to fight a two-front battle. And shortly after the internet bubble burst and I'd lost my job and we were all going off to other things and we were about to start Menlo, I had breakfast with Bob. I told him what we were planning on doing with Menlo. And fortunately for me, he looked across the table and he says, you will absolutely be successful, Rich. Guaranteed. And as a young entrepreneur at that point, as somebody who'd never started a business before, those words were very comforting. And I looked at him, I said, why do you say that? Tell me more. Why do you think I'm going to succeed? And he says, you're so passionate about what you're doing. You're so competent at it. You've already done it once. You are going to be successful. There's no question. And that was, again, those kind of leaders for me were very important. Authors have been very important to me, to guide me. Tom Peters, Peter Senge wrote the book, The Fifth Discipline. Peter Drucker's books on management are very helpful. Edgar Schein's books on culture Patrick Lencioni's books on teamwork, building great teams, the books from Vital Smarts, both Crucial Conversations and Influencer, the books from the Arbinger Institute, Leadership and Self-Deception, The Anatomy of Peace, The Outward Mindset. All of these authors have just been very inspirational for me to give me a picture of what things could be.
もし可能でしたら、今、いくつか、本の話題も出ましたが、リッチーさんが好きな本、あえてあげるとするならば、その3冊というのをピックアップしていただけると嬉しいです。
Number 1, Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. Number 2, Influencer by Vital Smarts. And number 3, I'm going to cheat a little bit here. A number of books by Patrick Lencioni. Probably first and foremost, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, followed by The Ideal Team Player, and also a book that I found personally very motivating called Getting Naked. And those, so if you only had to pick one, I'd pick 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So Leadership and Self-Deception, Influencer, and 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
ありがとうございます。なんか非常に多くのロールモデルのなんかね、お名前が出てきたので、また出版物の話も出てきました。後で調べてですね、ぜひ読んでみたいなと思います。ありがとうございます。はい。で、次の話題としては、ジョイングの中の話に戻るんですけども、スペースとノイズについての、話が、出てました。スペースとノイズはチームがチームワークの魔術を引き起こすための重要な要素だという言葉が、ジョイングの第2章に載っています。で、実際今、このコロナ禍で、リモートワークが中心になってきていると聞いております。で、今現在、その、考え方、そのコンセプトとか、そういうのが変わったんでしょうか。もし変わったのであれば、どのように変わったのか、変わってなければ、どのように、それを実現しているのかということを教えていただけますでしょうか。
Is there anything that hasn't changed? You know, yes, there's no question for us that the space of Menlo has been very important. And intriguingly, it's mainly because of what we don't do with our space as opposed to what we do with it. We don't put up walls, we don't put up doors, we don't carve it off into little pieces. Every space we've ever been in has been just one big open room. And anywhere there was a wall, we tried to get rid of it rather than keep it. Sometimes the walls had to stay to hold up the ceiling, that sort of thing. So, or, you know, privacy walls around bathrooms and that sort of thing. But you know, there's an old saying that I think Churchill said. I probably used it in the book. First we shape our buildings, and then our buildings shape us. And you know, if you think about how many corporations are organized in their physical space, they start to put us in little boxes, right? They put us down corridors, and we get stuck in particular places. And my personal belief is that our brains actually, they take comfort in regular patterns, right? It's, you know, we don't, it's why we don't move all the furniture in our house around every day, because we trip over it, we'd stumble over it, we wouldn't know where everything is, that sort of thing. But Menlo's space changes kind of every day, little ways. Sometimes it changes in big ways when we just get bored with the setup and we change it. But it's those little changes that keep us a little bit on edge, right? That there a little bit of change causes us to think differently. And I think it feeds that creativity, that imagination. Because if we walk down the same, you think about a company where you drive the same way to work every day, you park in the same parking spot, you walk in the same door, you go up the same elevator, you walk down the same hallway, you go into the same office, you sit down at the same desk, and your boss says, now think up something new today. The odds that are going to happen are actually pretty low. But the way we work, the space changes. Your pair partner changes at least every 5 days. Sometimes the project you're working on changes. Sometimes the technology you're working in changes. Sometimes the domain you're working in or the industry changes. And of course, you're kind of getting bumped around a little bit. You have to think, you have to stay in active thinking mode. It's very difficult at Menlo to just kind of settle in and just say, you know what, I just want to do the same thing day in, day out. That's not going to happen at Menlo. So it keeps that part of your brain just working all the time on adapting to new ways of doing things, which I think is, again, I think adaptation is part of agility, lowercase agility. We humans are very agile, adaptable creatures. It's funny how we use humans sometimes. No, we're gonna hire you for what you did the last 10 years, and we're gonna ask you for the next 10 years to do the exact same thing. So yes, the space is important. The processes we use within the space and its noise generates a nice human energy. And of course, all that changed when we had to go work from home. And the team felt it. Now, there were things we didn't give up. We still work together. We still work in pairs. We just do it like we're doing now. They're in a Zoom meeting or a Google Meetup all day long with their pair partner, talking through the problems they're going to solve. If they're on a larger team, they might gather 4 or 6 people with them and all be in a Zoom meeting. We'll still be working individually together, but we can overhear our peers. It doesn't work as well, but it works. And I think we are fundamentally changed by this. I think there are some things we won't go back on. I think that we will always now embrace remote work. The team still wants to be back together. They still want a physical office. They still want to be together. But I think for me personally, my beliefs are different now. We will embrace people who say, hey, today I have to stay home with a sick child, or I have to wait for a delivery guy because we're getting something, and I can still work. I'm waiting for the doorbell to ring, but all the time I'm waiting, I could be working, and I could just be doing it like this. And so there's no question this has worked and worked well enough that, we are fundamentally changing our beliefs. But those other things are still very important. Keeping the human energy high, very important. There's some extra things we've had to learn to do to make sure that we're still staying connected. We have this formula, if you will, for teamwork, which we think teamwork is one of the most important things in software development now, right? You very seldom can in one person create great software. It's got to be a team of people, right? Teamwork is based on collaboration. Collaboration is based on trust. Trust is based on relationships. And relationships can only be formed by spending time together. It would be very difficult to have, say, a long distance marriage over Zoom. Can we raise our kids that way? Can we teach them that way? There's a lot of things I think societally we've lost when we've all gone apart. There's things that we're doing to make sure they work as well as possible, but I doubt there's many teachers who would say, you know what, this remote teaching is working great. Let's just stay there. No, I think there's still value of people getting together in an open space and working together and learning from each other and overhearing things. One of the things I think we lose in this environment, different from Menlo, is probably one of the most important mechanisms for creativity that the human mind ever comes up with. And the word that in English is serendipity. That serendipity that you hit. And sometimes serendipity occurs because you think you heard something. You overhear something, you're like, hey, I got an idea. based on what you guys said. And they're like, what did we say? And you said, well, you said this. And they're like, no, we didn't actually say that. But the idea still came out of it, right? It bumped something in our brain because we were near somebody else. We overheard something and we're like, boom, this is it. This is the idea I've been waiting for. That's serendipity. And we need that. With all the problems we face as humans these days, we need that kind of creative energy.
はい、ありがとうございます。非常にリモートワークに対しての考え方ですとか、参考になる点が多かったです。ありがとうございます。では、ちょっと次にですね、その視点をもう少し変えていきたいと思うんですけど、今後の話に移っていきたいなと思っています。このメンドイノベーションズを、リッチーさんとして10年後、どういう姿にしていきたいと考えてますでしょうか。また、リッチーさん個人として、そのリタイアを考えているのか、考えているのであれば、その先、どんなことをやっていきたいと思っているのか、みたいなことを、聞けると嬉しいです。
Well, there was a time in my career where I was very long before Menlo, where I was in a personal trough of disillusionment, and I didn't think I could even stay in the industry, that I had to get out because I was so disillusioned with how my career was going. My kids knew it. My wife knew it. I think the dog knew it. They could tell I wasn't a happy guy. This was back when I was in my mid-30s. And now my kids are convinced I will never retire. They're like, oh, Dad, you won't ever retire. Why would you? You're having so much fun at Menlo. And that was certainly true up until the time the pandemic hit. And I think a couple of times during the pandemic, maybe one particular bad day, I uttered the word retirement a couple of times, and I think I scared my co-founder James when he heard it. But I'm back now. I'm still believing I won't retire. I think my life will change. I'll probably do different things. I will reprioritize, maybe a little bit more towards grandchildren and a little bit more towards golf and travel with my wife and that sort of thing. But if I'm healthy and my brain is still working fine, I see no reason to stop working. I have an older brother who's 8 years older than me. He's in his early 70s. He's still working. I admire people who work well into their 80s. There's a lot of people here in Ann Arbor I know that have worked well into those years, and they're still good functioning, contributing members of society, and it'll keep me young at the very least. I know that. As far as Menlo itself goes, we actually have written a big vision on our website that you can go read. It's a 10-year vision. It describes in pretty good detail a day in February of 2027 when we have a big party. You guys are invited. You can come visit us. It will be the celebration of Thomas Edison's 180th birthday. And we describe Menlo in that vision, in that story of the future. How many people do we have? What kind of business are we in? How are things going? That sort of thing. And we were doing pretty well heading towards that picture. And then all of this hit. And so I don't know if it changes that picture. Probably, at least it might delay it. We might not get exactly as far as we thought we would get, because this is going to affect us for a year or two. So we had to come up with a different short-term vision strategy for the company. And we built a 5-step model for that. And number one was survive, just preserve enough cash to get through this tough time. Number two was adapt. We've certainly done that. We had to adapt very quickly. Number three is, we're doing pretty well on this right now, is sustain. Get up to a certain point and just keep a steady state so we can sustain. It's better than just surviving. We can actually pay our people everything we need to pay them, and we actually satisfy our clients the way we need to, and that sort of thing. The next one we're well into, and it's emerge stronger. We have made a lot of adaptations that we will keep. A lot of things have changed at Menlo that we like so much. Virtual tours now. We're doing virtual tours of Menlo. We virtualized a lot of our classes at Menlo. Since June 5th, we have entertained visitors virtually like this from over 40 countries and 35 states. They've come from all over the world. And we will keep that. That has made us stronger. That has given us a bigger reach into the world than we've ever had before. And then ultimately where we're headed is thrive again. Get back on that track heading towards our vision. We're not there yet. We are nowhere near thriving again. We are still watching everything day to day. And you know, that's the world we live in. Can we get to that long-term vision again? I hope so. We haven't given up on it. We haven't rewritten it yet. But we'll see. What I think the constant that will remain, and even this conversation is evident of that. The team always asked us, because in our plans, there's plans for growth, and they wanted to know, why grow? Why not just stay the same size? It's comfortable. It's like family, that sort of thing. And the reason we wanted to grow wasn't because James and I had some grand financial ambitions personally to buy a second home or a big boat or, you know, a cottage up in the mountains so we could go skiing from. We're pretty comfortable in our lives there. What we wanted to do was increase the Menlo effect in the world. We get to do that through books, through speaking, through interviews, through visits and tours and collaborations with other companies. As long as we can do that, I think we will be satisfied that we will have changed the world in the way we intended to change it. It doesn't have to be all us. You know, we share what we learned with the world in the hopes that they can take some of that Menlo joy for themselves. Maybe later say, you know what, we learned a lot from Menlo and they changed us for the better. And we really appreciate that. And that doesn't have to be something we, you know, maybe they took some classes from us. Maybe they did a project with us, that sort of thing. But if we increase that Menlo effect, I will probably achieve what I want in my lifetime. And that is simply to leave this planet a better place than I found it. I think that's the most any one of us can ask of ourselves, is you came into this world, you had an effect, and then you left this world. Did you leave it? Did something you do leave this place a better place than you found it? And I think we've already done that. I feel satisfied in my own career. I just want to do more of that now.
はい、ありがとうございます。非常に大変興味深い、いろんな話を聞けて本当に嬉しかったです。最後にですね、この、クリエーションラインデーに参加していただいている方々にですね、メッセージをいただけると非常に嬉しいです。メンロエフェクトというキーワードも出ていましたけども、僕ら、このジョインクから、吸収した素晴らしい考え方と文化をですね、日本全国に広めていきたいと思ってやっています。で、今日これを聞いていただいている方々はですね、僕らの、クライアントでありパートナーの方々です。僕らのファミリーですかね、仲間の人たちです。で、ぜひこの素晴らしい考え方と文化を皆さんで広めていって、みんなが生き生きとしている、その愛すべき職場っていうのをですね、いろんなところに作っていきたいなと思っています。そういった意味でですね、ぜひ、最後に、リッチーさんから皆さんへのメッセージをお願いできればと思います。お願いします。
You know, I think especially right now, with everything we're all going through in the world, with the pandemic, the social issues we're seeing, the economic effects of all of this, we can either emerge stronger from this or emerge weaker. It is our choice as leaders to do that. And I think what Mr. Yasuda is doing what Creation Line is doing, what Menlo is doing, is trying to help ourselves and others emerge stronger from everything we've been through. And we will come out of this. We know we will. We always have. But it is a choice of leadership to emerge stronger or emerge weaker. And it is the actions of leaders that will determine which side of that road you choose to go on from here. I have learned an important lesson in the last year, and that is building a strong foundation of an intentionally joyful culture. It's probably the most important work I've ever done in my professional life. It has allowed us to get through this time, get through it as a team, get through it together. I hope through the work of Menlo, through the work of Creation Line, through our partnering together to work together to share ideas and bring those ideas to others, that we can help all of you emerge stronger, be happier with your work lives, have a more joyful team that works for you, and produce better results for the world. And I know it is possible to do that. I hope through the work we're doing together, we can inspire you on a path like that.